This is episode 267 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with my guest, Scott Trench. Scott is the co-host of the BiggerPockets Money podcast, the author of Set for Life, and a passionate advocate of financial independence. Of course, he's also the former CEO of BiggerPockets. Scott, welcome to the show.
Jonathan, thank you so much for having me here today.
Yeah, I'm excited to finally get you on the show and get your points of view on not just real estate, but on money. Because as I learned when I read your book a long time ago, Set for Life, the core of your journey started with understanding money. Am I right about that?
Yeah, the saying is people don't want a drill. Real estate's a drill. They want a hole, financial freedom, right?
Yeah.
But real estate is a tool in your arsenal to get to financial freedom. And it's just so particularly powerful for the median income earner in this country who is spending most of their money on rent or their home mortgage. If you can house hack or live in flip to get started, it's just the number one tool outside of building a business that's available to Americans today.
Yeah. And I really think, going back, because I know you found BiggerPockets at some point, but when I found it, I was already investing for a long time, but I was like, wow, there's all these people here. It's been a huge resource for people to be able to find a ton of information that can put these light bulb moments and then find the books to help them, right?
Yeah, I mean, the journey for a real estate investor is you're going to spend several hundred hours learning about real estate before all the mental models. It's not rocket science, but there's 50-ish mental models that you got to have good frameworks on in order to make good decisions as a real estate investor. Everything from screening tenants to analyzing properties for cash flow to estimating CapEx, understanding how that is going to hit at various different points in time, to managing different conflict resolution situations, to understanding whether you're getting ripped off from a contractor's perspective or not. And you're going to pay that price in terms of self-education, either upfront or after you've bought the property. So BiggerPockets has done a really good job. I think a lot of folks have been able to pay that price of that self-education for free by consuming content just like this podcast, in a continuous flow of updated current conversations about real estate for 20 years now. And it'll continue for another 20 or 100 years because I think people will always be interested in this. And of course, if you are one of the people who did not put in that education up front, and you're going to get that education on the ground while shelling out large amounts of money to correct the mistakes you made.
When we talk financial freedom, because we always know that's what most people are focused on, don't you think what they're really focused on is time freedom, the ability to do what they want when they want, and that the finances is the vehicle to get to time freedom?
Yeah, money is a tool to get time freedom and power over your life within the constraints of the lifestyle that you desire.
Yeah, but it starts all the way back at the beginning, because when you wrote Set for Life, it documented your journey, and a lot of it was just about smart money saving mechanisms to make sure that you're really building the financial foundation. And that's part of what you're passionate about now, making sure that people have a financial foundation so that then they can then grow it along over time.
Yeah, absolutely. The goal always will be financial independence, and for the financial position to continue to expand so that more and more optionality and power and control come into my life. And when you're getting started and you're making $50,000 a year, like I was as a financial analyst with limited ability to increase your income outside of work, the most powerful tool was a house hack, was real estate investing. And I didn't want real estate specifically.
Yeah.
It was just like, let's analyze it like a financial analyst. My biggest expenses are housing, transportation, and food. Yes, I'm going to start packing my lunches and generally control my expenses while I eat out. Yes, I'm going to bike to work when I can and drive my Toyota Corolla economy vehicle. And then the most obvious thing was, I'm shelling out all this money on rent. I'm not going to live under a bridge or in some dilapidated situation. So I'm going to house hack. And so that's where the duplex purchase came in.
Yeah. And
so it was that. And the advantage of buying a duplex or a live-in flip is it's training wheels for real estate investment. So I learned how to screen a tenant, analyze a property as a rental, all those kinds of things, when my time was worth $25 an hour and it was not very valuable. Now I've developed that skill set. I easily got, the 10,000 hours in discussing or talking about real estate at this point because of the nature of my job as CEO and my personal investments.
And I mean, you're obviously looking around and judging the towns that are on that map to see where's the path of progress, what's going to work. And I think, with the technological advancements that are out there, there are people who are spending a little bit too much time online and not enough back to the old school ways of actually driving for dollars or just driving the neighborhoods to see what those houses look like in the area instead of only relying on data.
By the way, that mastermind group was also for business. And so
Yeah.
everyone had to bring a hypothesis. There's 8 guys. So once every 8 weeks, you bring a hypothesis.
Yeah. Nice.
And so when it was my turn, I brought in a very deeply baked, well, I've worked on this for a long time, hypothesis for a business for winter tire rentals here in Colorado. And I was going to say, okay, I'm going to buy sets of tires and
Yeah.
rent them out to people. And they don't want to store them. So I'll store them for them and get a trailer and all this stuff. And these guys ripped it apart. I spent a lot of time. They were like, this is like they were very polite about it, but they were very, very clear of like, think about this. So you're going to buy a set of tires, and the next year, then you're going to get another customer. You're going to buy another set of tires. You're going to spend $400 or $500 for these tires, maybe more. You're going to rent them for $250, right? So you theoretically get your 2-year payback. But then the next year, you're going to get new clients, so you're going to have to pay another $500. So you're going to get a geometrically expanding set of tires, and you're going to outlay tons of cash every year you grow. Until you're able to, it's just not going to, it was, then you're going to store them and they're all different. You're going to have people, it was awesome. Right. And so, but that's the power of a hypothesis. You don't have to, that's where I had probably a politer version of Jonathan, telling me, how dumb the plan was.
Yeah.
And that was helpful. I abandoned that and did not build a winter tire rental business that would have set me back several years.
What do you think new investors are struggling with now the most, outside of the high rates? Because a lot of us are always saying like, you should always be looking, but there's a lot of people scared off by the high rates, especially if they're trying to, get into this fire movement and retire early, but they don't know how to get in.
And, you're asking me, well, aside from the high rates, that's the problem is cash flow. You
Yeah.
cannot,
Yeah.
5 years ago, you could buy a property at max leverage, putting 25% down with a 30-year conventional mortgage. And there's a spread between the cap rate and the interest rate. You can get much more cash flow than the payment on the mortgage, much more rent than the payment on the mortgage, and then have some left over for covering maintenance, capex, vacancy, utilities, the works. And now you can't do that in most markets around the country. And so, or I would say you couldn't do that in most markets around the country. I think what's happening now, though, is if you actually look at the multifamily, the small multifamily that is listed for sale, or the stuff that's recently expired around the market and going under contract, I think that's beginning to change. Certainly here in Denver, I'm more active than I've ever been in buying real estate right now. I think it's in terms of the amount of rent and amount of net operating income you can get relative to the purchase price of rental properties. This is the best environment I've ever seen. Sometimes it doesn't work because it's the interest rates still need to, are still too low if you're using max leverage. But I'm really thinking that now is a good time to buy for me in my specific market.
Yeah.
I would bet that that is true in places like Austin, Texas. I think it could be buy time in Florida.
Oh yeah.
Or major parts of Florida, maybe major parts of the Southeast. It may not be changing, and I don't know these markets that well, but I'm hypothesizing this based on what the loose bits I have from the macro. It may not be quite as easy to buy or as much of a buyer's market in places like Chicago or Boston or parts of California right now. But I think depending on where you're at, it could be a deep buyer's market. And like Austin is a great example. I don't know this, but I think home prices are up 1 or 2% year over year. But I bet you that if you dig in and find the duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes, those are sitting on the market seeing significant price drops.
Yeah.
There's not good data tracking their price points year over year in certain areas. And I found a property here in Denver. I bought 2 this year. I'm under contract in a second, so I'll close next week if things go well. But both of them have seen at least 5 price drops after being listed in early 2024 over the last year. And I looked up both of them, watched them go down significantly bit by bit by bit, and then got them under that last asking price. So if that's not a crash in the market, I don't know what is in small multifamily. So I think there's a component to that of, hey, just because the market as a whole seems to be higher price and the rents haven't gone anywhere, doesn't mean that the subsectors of that market, certain neighborhoods or certain of those
Yeah.
income properties income properties in a general sense in Denver, I think are seeing a major overall price reduction, at least the ones that need to move.
Yeah.
And so that's the piece I would maybe encourage a new investor to think through is, yeah, it's hard out there. You can't just throw a random dart at the wall and have a spread from the cap rate versus the interest rate. But I think it's also a buyer's market, and you should have your eyes wide open about that and think about what that means. If it's not a good time to buy right now, it certainly is not as bad a time to buy as it was 2 years ago.